All right. Here for another week of Ryan's Records Review. Here we
How's it
go.
going? Yeah, excited about this week. Welcome, guys. I hope you guys have been tuning in recently and checking out some of the other episodes. We have a good one for you this week. We're reviewing My Morning Jacket, which, if you've never heard of My Morning Jacket, they're a very unique band. Been around for quite a while. They have a album that they released called the Waterfall 2. I think it's part 2. I believe. I think there's the first one, right? There's
Correct.
yeah, so this is the second installment of that album. I'm excited to do this because My Morning Jacket is kind of a unique band, and it's a certain style of music that kind of fits a certain kind of demographic, in my opinion, when it comes to their listeners. They have a very unique kind of audience, which tends to. I don't know if you've noticed this about other people, Nick, or other music genres in general, but they tend to just kind of stick with their core target market,
Yeah.
which I understand, and it's a comfort zone, and it's a thing that a lot of groups, artists in general do, and which is fine, totally fine. But with My Morning Jacket, I feel that they need to. I think they need to be heard by a lot more people, and I
Absolutely.
know
I
that.
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and you said just recently you said that you have seen them live. So tell me a little bit about what they were like live, because I it kind of plays into what my thoughts are with them, I think.
So, I mean, I saw them on tour with Mumford and Sons. They did Mumford and Sons does the like a traveling tour. Usually every other summer, every third summer, they go to some small town, and it's like a 2-day camp out. My Morning Jacket was one of the nights, one of the headliners for the night before Mumford plays, and as you can hear just in the music, it's total festival. Like,
Yep.
I would say our generation's jam band. I don't want to say
Yep.
jam band, but
No, I do.
it's yeah.
I think that's a perfect way to say it. They are newer generation style of jam band. Yep.
Yeah. Well, now, so my history, I fell in love with the Waterfall one. I've known, I was a big fan of Z and going back at some of their earlier records. When this came out, and this record, by the way, came out in 2020, July of 2020. So, and we'll get more
Coming
into
up on
that.
a year old.
I didn't listen to it because, I mean, July 2020, there's a lot of stuff going on in the pandemic world. So I missed it. And then, so this literally was my first playthrough of this record. But obviously, I was a huge fan of Waterfall 1. So that was kind of my experience going into this thing.
But you had never seen or heard or listened to them prior to seeing them live, correct?
No, I was a fan of their early stuff when I saw them live.
Okay.
And then when the Waterfall came out, actually, it would have been right about when that new album came out. I was ready to. I was gung ho on it. So right about 2015 when I saw them.
See, and I'm kind of jealous of that because my take on jam bands, I've seen a lot of different styles of jam bands in my life. Being a musician and playing a lot of live shows, I was exposed to a lot of varieties of what people would call jam bands, fusion jam bands, jazz style jam bands that they all try to put their own little twist on it. And it's always tough for me to listen to a jam band's album. Part of the allure and part of the draw to a jam band is that idea of jamming and kind of playing the emotion that you're feeling at that time. And I have always known that from the first time that I listened to My Morning Jacket, the first time that I listened to My Morning Jacket was I knew right away that I was like, I want to see these guys live. I don't feel that their albums really give it justice as to what they can do or what they do on a musical level. Where I actually heard of My Morning Jacket was actually from the show American Dad.
Good episode. That is a perfect episode.
Yeah, so Stan falls in love. Well, his daughter Haley loves this band, My Morning Jacket. And Stan is an anti-music, if you've never seen the show, he's like an anti-music, anti-hippie, anti-everything, CIA agent, staunch Republican kind of character. And he doesn't want his daughter going to these rock music festivals kind of thing. So she sneaks out of the house and he actually goes to find her at the concert, and he takes his earplugs out. And he hears this lead singer, his name James Joyce, I want to say.
Jim James.
Jim James, that's what it is, Jim James. And Jim James's voice, which he's got a unique, phenomenal kind of higher toned voice, and Stan falls in love with it. So the songs that they play on American Dad were the first ones that I listened to. I downloaded them right away and really jammed them for a while. And then the end of the episode, they actually showed them live and just kind of show what they sound like. I feel like if you're listening to anything along this style of music, you need to see this group live. Getting into the album Waterfall 2, I definitely got the sense that sometimes an album it almost felt like it restricted them a little bit. I don't know. You've seen them live. You've seen what they can do live. Did you get that vibe from this album at all, or were you like, yeah, this is a My Morning Jacket album?
No, it was definitely a My Morning Jacket album.
Okay.
Especially there's that song on the album that jams, and I didn't print off the. I gotta pull up the track.
I got it. I think I know what you're talking about.
It's just. I'll pull it up.
Yeah, go ahead.
They're totally, like that song encompasses what they are like live.
Okay.
Like it's just a total groove fest. Like I don't know. It's just such a smoke a J and watch them live.
Yeah,
it was totally.
It's funny that you say that because I felt that this album was split in half. I felt the first half of the album almost felt like an homage to their influences, because to me, the first 5 or 6 songs was I don't want to say that I was irritated, because I wasn't. I don't, that's not the word I want to use, but I was almost kind of like, this doesn't feel like My Morning Jacket, or at least the My Morning Jacket that I had listened to. The first few songs felt like Pink Floyd, felt like late Beatles stuff. That song, Climbing the Ladder, has a real tasty lick to it. It's got some cool, if you like almost like a Joe Walsh kind of feel to it. It felt very kind of Joe Walsh style of guitar playing, which I enjoyed. The song had a good bounce to it and just kind of bebopped along, it kind of had a cool little vibe to it. But then they had these moments where they would kind of go into these slower, kind of Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, kind of the drummer would kind of sit on the ride cymbal a little bit with some slower kind of drum beats to it. And it again, you're trying to mimic one of the greatest bands of all time when you do something like that. You're paying homage to them. I get that. And I'm all for influences and kind of putting your influences into your style of music. But it just, that first half of the album, I didn't love, because I was like, man, this sounds like the Beatles. This sounds like Pink Floyd. This sounds like Joe Walsh. This sounds kind of like an Eagles ripoff. I didn't love it. It wasn't until the second half of the album when I was like, okay, I like this album. The song Wasted is
That's
the one
song that I was talking about. Was the total jam.
Dude, it jams. It rocks out. It's got, you know what it felt like to me, Nick? And if it didn't for you, that's fine. But it almost felt kind of Black Sabbath in the way the guitar part, that do 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 do.
Yep.
Just had
kept drowning on, and it was dude. This album also is so bass heavy. Like the bass riffs in this album, I'm driving in my car. Highlighted. I was like, Ryan's got to be digging this album so much.
And I have a note on that, because the bass player definitely, to me, felt like he was the most comfortable with the songs. I was begging for a sweet guitar lead, a solo. Those long extended jam parts. As a jam band, there's only so many things you can do. You can do a vocal kind of sing along, which is what they do with that song, something about the water.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name of that one, but they do kind of this sing along trance kind of thing where everyone's kind of singing along the same line over and over again. That's one thing you can do as a jam band. As another thing you can do,
they do that a lot on their older albums too.
Yes, and you can. That's a very common jam band thing to kind of get the crowd involved. You talk about how they're kind of like a festival style feel to their music, and definitely people singing along. Playing hacky sax, singing along, doing their whole thing and vibing on it. The other thing that jam bands can do is they can kind of do a little bit more improv with their guitar playing and bass playing, and they just kind of kind of mess around almost throughout the song. The bass player definitely felt most comfortable. The guitar leads just didn't do it for me on this album. And this is personal preference. It's been done where I've enjoyed it, but when I listen to a guitar solo or some type of lead in a song that's kind of like this style, I don't care for it when the guitar part is in the same octave area as the vocal part.
Okay.
I prefer it either higher up on the neck to where there's a departure from the vocal part and the guitar part. If you're going to do the same kind of octave zone area on the guitar as the vocal, it tends to be one note and kind of be very similar. In a band like My Morning Jacket, they're really good with their dynamics. Their highs are really high and jamming. They can bring it down to a low volume and make you kind of bring you back down to earth kind of feel. The guitar leads weren't what I was hoping for from a jam style band. Does that make sense?
Yep. And maybe this little information about the album. So the cover here looks very similar to the My Morning Jacket Waterfall 1. It's in the same color scheme. It's in the same, I mean, it's almost like the same waterfall with a different angle shot. And I'm going to explain a little bit about that. So the album Waterfall 1 came out in 2015. In 2020, when the pandemic started, Jim James went in and grabbed all the extra tapes they had from the Waterfall, because when the Waterfall came out in 2015, they said, we have another album coming out real soon. We recorded enough for 2 albums. More's coming quick. Well, that was in 2015. It's 2020. It's 5 years.
Right.
So they went back, revisited. He dug out all this stuff. He's like, some of this stuff is awesome. So a lot of these are leftovers from the Waterfall, except for the last song on the record, which is, well, not the last song, but the Welcome Home was actually a live jam song that had never been recorded. It was on they did it for like a radio station thing. There was like a kind of a thing there, but they never professionally recorded it. So they finally put it all together on here. So I think it was I really dug this record. I really did. I've listened to it over and over.
I think it's a great album to put on in while you're just. So I find ways to. I put music to my mood sometimes, and this is an album that I will put on if I'm barbecuing, and it's just like something to have on, and people will go like, oh, that's who's this or something like that. It's a very kind of outdoor feelsy kind of album. I thought that the last 2 songs on the album, Wasted was my favorite song, by the way. I thoroughly enjoyed that song. I jammed that a few times in a row sometimes because it felt good. It just felt right. But the last 2 songs, Welcome Home, and I can't remember what the last song on the album was, but those 2 to me felt the most My Morning Jacket. Their chord progressions, their guitar parts. The guitar player, it sounds like he uses an octave pedal when he does some of his riffs. So you get the high pitched part with the very low octave undertone that matches it, which is kind of a unique sound. They do that with jam bands because a lot of the times the jam band, the bass player is doing his own thing, and you need that kind of bass undertone with your guitar parts. But the last 2 songs were very My Morning Jacket to me. The top half of the album felt very. This is going to sound terrible, and it's not terrible, but it's just a figure of speech. But like a poor man's Pink Floyd, or a poor man's Sgt. Pepper's, or later Beatles stuff. It had that vibe. I liked it. It sounded good, but I just couldn't
simpler
get it out of my head. I couldn't get it out of my head. I just was like, man. Every time I listened through this album, I was like, I don't hate these songs, but it just reminds me too much like Pink Floyd, and it doesn't do it for me like Pink Floyd does, and it kind of missed that mark. But overall, I mean, a really nice album. Definitely My Morning Jacket based on the other things that I've listened to. I do think that some of their more bigger tracks on some of their other albums definitely kind of tickle my music bone a little bit more than some of these ones. But, James loves his voice, and he puts that reverb on that voice, and that thing just fills your headset. It really does. And it kind of makes the musician or the music or the instruments kind of play second fiddle to his voice, which kind of bugs me a little bit sometimes, but he's got a good voice, I mean, sing it, play it, do it, do your thing. So,
what'd you think about the song? There's a song called Run It on here. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Run It's kind of an inside joke between Nick and I. Was a common saying when we were playing Halo.
Rude game on there. Well, Brian's on a gaming channel as well. It's all about gaming. And it was always like when we were, sitting around chitty chatting, it was like time to game. It was always like, run it. That was always, which actually was one of the, like you said, the second half of the album, Run It, Wasted, Welcome Home the first time. Those songs were definitely the grooviest, the most, I felt like I was at a festival.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I believe, I think Run It was the one that was piano heavy too. Whoever plays the piano for them needs to be highlighted more. He had some phenomenal piano parts that, to me, should be highlighted more and more. I would actually almost prefer some of those piano parts over the guitar parts that they had. I thought that the piano player, the times that he was on there were great. The song that had the horns in it as well.
Yeah,
that
cool.
Sounded awesome. I think I appreciated those parts. They sounded good. They worked well together. And I think that I definitely have put My Morning Jacket on the list of bands that I want to see live, because I do think that they are handcuffing themselves on albums sometimes. I think the way to see them and hear them is live. But you're going to want to know the songs going into the show.
You got it. They jam like they do on Wasted. They take those songs and then they jam those jam sections.
Out. Yep.
But the rest of the song, they're very true to their song. So
sure,
they're not going to totally whack it out. It's not like a total reimagining.
Because that's the thing about a jam band. I've seen some good musicians as jam bands, but sometimes I'm like, all right,
wrap it up.
Do we need 13 minutes of this part? Let's.
Yeah.
I get that you're up there vibing and you're feeling what you're playing, and I'm all for it. But when you're a jam band and you have an hour set and you have 3 songs on your set list, that's a red flag. I don't need that. But jam bands, when they write an album, it almost feels like they're trying to do a set list. And their progression of songs is almost like the progression of if you're going to see them live, and that's what I did when I listened to this album. I was like, I want to know if they're playing this album live, what's going to be their encore, what's going to be their finisher. Wasted is definitely their finisher, and then those last 2 songs I think are great encore style songs when we all chant one more song, because those last 2 songs are very just those last 2 songs were a good finish to the album. I think the finish of the album was better than the start, which is usually backwards for me. Usually the album that starts strong is one of my more favorites, but they did a nice job.
I like Spinning My Wheels. That was actually the song that got this first song on the album. It's actually the song that made this album happen, because he was listening to that song, a recording, and that's how this all came to be. Yeah. So I have to say that I enjoyed the first half of the album probably more than you did. I just couldn't
get over the Pink Floyd and later Beatles. I couldn't.
It's okay.
There's
good. Nothing wrong with that, man.
It's good. I gotta stop that. That's
okay. So what I did, I listened to the whole album, and then I went back to the Waterfall 1, and I found myself singing, obviously because I know the songs a lot more. I'm singing along to it. It did feel like there was a little bit of, this is what's left.
Okay.
I did feel a tinge of this is the songs that didn't make the first album. But then Wasted is like a good enough song. It's better than any song they had in the first one.
Yeah.
So it's not a strictly Bees album. I mean, but I see what you're saying. I definitely get it.
I can see a producer, and I don't know who produced the album, or if they're in charge of their own producing, or if they have anything to say.
Produced by Jim James and Tucker Merton.
Yeah, so I'm glad they have a hand in on that. But I can definitely see people being like, that sounds a lot like Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot like Joe Walsh on that song. But I don't know, good stuff. I definitely suggest it, especially if you are into that jam band style of music. But if you're not, My Morning Jacket is definitely a group that you want to listen to first and foremost. I think that they, well, like you said, they don't play live very often. They play big time festivals a few times a year. And when bands like do that, that tells me that they're in high demand in their target market. And if you get a chance to see them live, I suggest it. But I definitely would suggest knowing some of their stuff going in, which is going to make the experience a lot better.
Absolutely. And it was for me when I went and saw them. So, like I said, we actually have a few copies of these in the store. Imagine that. We have some. There's actually 3 versions of this album. So this is, if you can see, I don't know if this is a hologram cover. This is the deluxe edition. It's $29. It's on green orange marble vinyl.
Cool.
And it has extra, like, some crazy label with a download. And then there's clear vinyl, and then there's Merlot vinyl, which I found ironic because it's totally like have a Merlot and chill out like record. So yeah, and they're like 24 and 25 for the clear. So they're not expensive. I like that the pricing is reasonable on them. They're available. They're not like a lot of records right now that go out of print, and you got to pay through the nose for them. I will say also that just looking at the reviews, I do all my research and I see reviews from, you go down the list, Kerrang and Pitchfork, and pretty much 8 out of 10 stars, which 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. And that's about right where I'd put it. I think this isn't going to go down as their greatest album of all time. But it's still worth picking up. I'm going to buy one. But there's, the Waterfall 1 is the first one. There's a reason why it's number 1, but it's right below it. It's worth picking up still.
Cool.
So,
well, good deal. We are, we've had a couple episodes prior to this. If you haven't checked those out, we reviewed Grandson, Death of an Optimist. And then we also did, Sturgill Simpson, Cutting Grass Volume 2, right? The second one of that. If you haven't listened to those reviews, please check them out. It might open your eyes to some new music. Again, that's kind of our goal here, is to get you to maybe try something that you've never really listened to before. I'm having a blast doing this with Nick. I look forward to Mondays to film this. I get excited about the new albums. And it's a good feeling to do this. I appreciate you having me do this for you, Nick, and I'm having a lot of fun.
Oh, man, we'll keep doing it, too.
Sure.
And subscribe, too. Hit that subscribe button. Helps us out. Keeps us doing fun things like this. And if you like gaming, check out Ryan over on his Casual Gaming.
Yep.
I'll put the link in the bio. It's down in the bio, guys. I'll put the My Morning Jackets in the bio, his Casual Gaming podcast in the bio. All that good stuff's down in the goodies area.
And we are working on getting a little bit better platform, so we're not bouncing back and forth with the screen. I know that's probably kind of annoying to see if you're watching, but it really, I'll listen if we'll get that stuff figured out as we go. But thanks for checking us out again. Again, we'll see you next week with a brand new review. And have a good week. We'll catch you next week.
See you next week, guys.